Now, good evening and welcome to another enlightening episode of The Insight, where we go deep beyond the headlines and take a look into the issues that are affecting our country. And tonight we'll be speaking about one issue that has left an indelible mark in Kenya's political and civic space, the GenZ protest. It started as a spark in social media and metamorphosized into a wave that swept across the nation. Young people, bold and digitally connected, going to the street demanding accountability, an end to corruption, and much more. Today, 1 year since that protest, what has changed? Now, we want to discuss this with my lovely panelists who have just joined me here. Mr. Moses Nyanduga, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
A governance expert, and Mr. Kiarie Nehemiah. Thank you so much, Mr. Kiarie, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Moses, let me begin with you. Looking back 1 year since the GenZ protest, to begin with, what were they agitating for?
Yes, thank you very much. The GenZ protest took place and swept over the months of June and July last year. And when you have a look at some of the things which made us go to the street, we were demanding to end corruption in the country. We were demanding for good governance, whereby we were saying we must be treated equally as the people, no matter or irrespective of the community where you come from. We were also talking about unemployment rate and what we can do to ensure that majority of our young people, especially from the tertiary institution, to get somewhere. So looking back 1 year from now, we must ask ourselves, what took us to the road? Things to do with the universal health coverage systems and the kind of development we need in the country. Have they been achieved?
Now, Mr. Nehemiah, Moses has just listed some of the things that made them go to the street.
Yes.
Do you think that they have been addressed up to now, 1 year since they went to the street?
Okay, thank you. They haven't been addressed, as you can see, and it was stated by the GenZ. They were leaderless. They did not follow anyone. They were tribeless. The GenZ demanded for accountability. They did not want extravagance. They did not want the corruption to continue, high levels of corruption, over-taxation. That's where the nickname Zakayo came. But up to now, even in the previous GenZ process the other day, they were still demanding the same things. So it seems that Bado, their needs have not been met, and that's why they were back on the street. Thank you.
Now, when you say you went to the street to demand accountability, an end to corruption, and the finance bill that was then dropped, a change of how things are done, in your view, do you think that some of them have been addressed, or have they been addressed in any way?
I'll say that we don't care whether the cat is white or black, as long as it can catch a mice. They're the same way Nelson Mandela said. I'm saying this in reference to the question you have just asked. When we view this topic from the context of whether our demands have been achieved or not, we must go back to the lane and say, when we were protesting again, we said that we do not care whether all cabinet ministers are from a specific region of the country. All we needed was the result. And now, when it comes to achieving this, the only thing which the president did last year was just to drop the finance bill. But what about the kind of education we are talking about, the new funding model? What about the health system? Because in the real sense, there is no education for all. There is no serious medical attention for all. We were talking about unemployment. And in fact,
but you realize that the government is doing whatever it takes probably to streamline issues. For example, the president admitted the other day there might be a little bit of some hiccups, you know.
Yes.
But he is on course to make sure that things work.
Yes, true. But now the problem is, and in fact, what makes us even much hungry about the matter is one thing. As much as we must have some of the problems, no any other country in the world lacks a problem. Every other country has some of the homegrown problems, and we must come with a homegrown solution. But remember, when we were agitating for change, we were all saying that as much as we have the problem, we also have the solution. The GenZ was saying that the solution was, let's end corruption. Let the people who are looting government ministries, various agencies, be arrested, their banks be frozen, the money taken back to the government. Through this, will increase the capitation to the Ministry of Education and to the Ministry of Health, which at the end of the day will allow us to solve the problems we are fighting.
I can see Mr. Nema is nodding,
Yes,
probably
yes.
in agreement with what you're saying.
Sure.
Now, if today corruption ends, do you think
Yes.
Kenyan problems will end?
Yeah, true, they will end because there's a lot of money that is being wasted. It's being taken to use that is not intended for. And that is why there is poor governance, there is lack of good services to the Mwananchi. And this is what is leading to all these protests. What they have done, they have just reduced the overtaxation. That's why this year's finance bill sailed through. But you see the problems are still there. There's still unemployment, there's still corruption going on, and there's still looting of public services funds, and there's still mismanagement. So nothing much has changed. The SHA has not improved. People are not still getting the full medical services. People are still taxed to the money to be taken to the housing levy and other things, and this will not help the Mwananchi.
Now, you see, when the president came out last year and said that we need to open up the political space to make sure that we accommodate as many voices as possible, especially the young people. Now, looking back, has that space achieved what it was intended to, Mr. Moses?
No. The reason for my answer is one. We don't need to open the political space for everyone so that for our demands or grievances rather to be achieved. No. We need a leader who is doing the right thing, not the good thing. Because remember, yes, our president is doing the good thing, but not the right thing at the moment. Now, when we talk about this kind of political space, I don't think it's very necessary to open up the political space for everyone. The only thing we need is to have a fair, transparent, and verifiable system. Through this, even without opening that space, everyone interested in governance and politics will find their own space.
But we realize, Mr. Nehemiah, that
Yes.
politics and development go hand in hand.
Sure.
And when the president came out and said we need to bring everyone on board, especially now that he brought in the Azimio, especially ODM members on board,
Yes.
to at least make him steer the country to the right direction. Do you think the country has gone the right direction, or it has just gone in some step backwards?
The country is not in the right direction.
Why?
And that's why there's this, the economy is becoming too hard to bear. With this so-called broad-based government, it seems they just brought a lot of, not helping there. It is just what they call unity, since the opposition now is now in government, but still the goals has not been achieved. What was the intended purpose for development, and they're just taking some development to those their areas, and still they are still politicking too much of little what they are doing.
No,
Yes.
excuse me. 1 year since the protest, what is the most visible thing that you can see that you can attach to the protest that took place, Mr. Nema?
1 year since then, we have seen the government has toned down in their way they are addressing the youth, since they have seen that this is a group that can plunder the country into chaos. They have tried to, like when the president sacked all the ministers and brought others, they have tried to bring a way of governance that is somehow friendly to the Mwananchi. With this empowerment they are bringing, with these SMEs they are bringing, with this they are saying that they want to build markets and some programs that, but they are just tokenism. But that is just a little effect, but there is a huge impact for the protest to our political class. The extravagance has reduced. There was a lot of wastage and extravagance and show off. This nowadays they are very careful with how they are handling themselves.
Now, the government came out and said that we shall reduce spending and at least make sure that the space is accommodative for all. Do you view that as a positive thing or a negative thing, Mr. Moses?
Yes, of course. I view it as a positive thing. If at all they can do what they promised. You know, promising us that they'll do that and doing it on the ground, these are two different things. The problem is that we do promise much more than what we can deliver. In other words, our political class has been in the business of promising a lion, but at the end of the day, delivering a rat. So, you know, I'm now generalizing all of them, although some of them are good now, so within. I can say we have some key figures, including Mr. President, who has promised several things, and again he has achieved some. We must also give credit where credit is due, and again failed to achieve some. So I think opening up the political space, even some of the things which are totally visible, and doing all it can take, reducing the expenditure. When it comes to expenditure, I don't agree with them. The reason being, there's some of the things, in fact, when we were saying sack all ministers, cabinet ministers, hire some. But in the recent, he was in the process of reshuffling. We never said that you need experts from Azimio, though maybe I can say it was for a good intention because they understand each other more than we do. But in the real sense, we need a system whereby we want to reduce expenditure. Instead of reducing that expenditure, let them have that expenditure to increase to some of the core ministries. We need to see something in the Ministry of Agriculture going on. Instead of reducing that expenditure, have partly and send to the Ministry of Education or Ministry of Health.
Now you see, when the president was talking, he talked about people want to take him down, and in terms of people saying one time, you know, something of that sort.
Yes.
Now, it will behoove us to offer alternative leadership if you want the president probably out of the way through the ballot. Then is the youth ready to provide an alternative leadership, and will that leadership steer the country to the right direction, Mr. Nehemiah?
Yes, I think the youth are ripe to provide an alternative leadership because they have just realized that tribalism is not helping them in any way. They need leadership and politics that are for development, are for empowerment, are for improving the infrastructure and the livelihood and the living standards of their people. This is what will make them even progress in their livelihood. So I think as far as I'm concerned, this youth, they are the Gen Z, Generation Z, they are educated, they are well equipped, they have a vision for their country. I think they are capable of bringing a transformative leadership.
Are you ready to be a leader?
Yes, very more than ready, in fact. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. And,
Yes,
and now you realize that leadership in itself carries a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
It requires a lot of planning, a lot of putting heads together. Is this something that the youth can really do?
Very much. I'll say that a section of them can do. Because we must remember that some of the youths are also outside there making noise, but they're not ready to provide that kind of leadership they want. So I'll say that the youth are ready to provide an alternative, but there's some of the responsibilities, what we call the real cost of politics now. Our leaders don't tell us, but they're very true. So I think not every youth is ready to carry that cost. So I'd rather say we have an alternative. We can bring that change we want to see. However, when it comes to the real cost of it, not all of us can bear. Have in mind that for you to be a successful leader, because the kind of politics we play in this country, let me call a spade, it's a dirty kind of politics, whereby it's a life-threatening game sometimes, not every time. So I think costs such as to provide your own security, it's out of hand, especially for somebody like me. But when it comes to good qualities of leadership, the youth have. But now the problem comes whereby we say a youth is an enemy of their own. A situation whereby majority of them have the same intention. And the tension they have is to be famous at the same time. So people will go to the protest, but everyone is just looking for that chance.
But you realize that even though the people are in terms of in some kind of a quagmire. Yes. They don't know they want this or they want this.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So in that scenario, we can't move forward.
True.
You hear that?
Yes.
We need to have a clear and distinct vision, Mr. Nehemiah.
Yes, there's sometimes a hidden motive you find that some youth are there for their political gain, maybe even for personal gain. They are not really, the intention is not even to change themselves, the country, or even the livelihood of the people that they are living with. So in this case, you find that most youth are just there for show off. That's why you find even when we are going for the maandamano and such, you find they are taking selfies, they are posting all over in the media, but they don't show the intention of wanting real change. And this real change, as our president has said today, it can be done through an alternative way of giving a better option rather than what is currently being provided by the government.
So what is this real change? What is this real change that you want?
Okay, the real change is the different kind of leadership in which, in this case, that their motives are clear, they are there for servant leadership and for transformative agenda of the people, but not for personal gain. Yes.
Do you agree that the real change that we need is an alternative kind of leadership?
Probably no. I'll say that as we go to the street to demonstrate, remember, we are not talking about an alternative kind of leadership. We are talking about some of the problems we face and how we can solve them. So President Ruto, should he transform some of the key ministries, then at the end of the day we'll say, we have the real change. This is the reason. Think of a situation whereby education will be free under his regime. There will be a reduced cost to access medical services, will be food secure in the country. You know, these are some of the primary roles of any government, any serious government in the world, with an intention of protecting its own people. So the real change we want is just streamlining whatever is happening in the government with the intention of the people, with our demands. Should he do this, then we'll have no problem with him. That is why you saw even young people during demonstrations when they said, we don't even care whether all ministers are Luos or Kikus or Kalenjin or any other tribe. All we need is result. And now, when we talk about this result, it's not just a result, but a sustainable development-oriented result. Not a short-term result, but a long-term result. Yes.
Now, Mr. Nehemiah,
Yes.
I presume that you went to the streets in last year, June 25th.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Has your life changed personally since then?
Okay, my life has changed since I've now been exposed too much on the input that I have as a youth in the governance of this country. I've also been enlightened in matters according to, as far as government is concerned, and the rights as a youth and what the mwananchi or the common citizen deserves. So in this case, I've been more enlightened, and now I know what to demand from the leaders that I elect.
What about you?
Yes, my life has greatly changed. And I'll say that there is a big difference this 1 year. I have learned and come to terms with the fact that sometimes in life, we must not think about what will happen if we question the government, but what will happen if we don't question the government. My participation in civic and political space has largely increased in terms of activism, human rights activism, democracy, and our quest for good leadership in the country. So intellectually, my life has changed. But economically, our lives are remaining the same. Though for some people I know it has changed, but for mine, yes, I must appreciate some of the smallest miles we have taken as a country and personal gains. But generally, my life has changed in the space of politics and civic engagement.
Do you think that the response that the government gave to these protests, whether last year or this year, do you think that they were any significant that can change things?
Personally, I don't think. Because the kind of response, if I were one of the leaders today, if the people are demanding good infrastructure, if they go to the streets to protest, then the kind of response I should give them is to improve that infrastructure. If people are demanding change in the education system, the kind of response I'm supposed to give is to streamline the goals and the vision of education to the real problems we have. and it must be affordable to every Kenyan citizen. So I don't believe that the response we are getting from the government is of much importance when it comes to this discourse, because it's more of, in fact, threatening Kenyans, which is not a problem, which in fact can even ponder the situation even much further to escalate the situation already we have.
But Mr. Nehemiah, you realize that
Yes.
there are some people who lost their lives in this protest last year,
Yes.
and their families are still gripping on that pain. What can you tell their families now that probably this struggle is continuing?
Okay, one, it's very unfortunate that people keep losing life in this Gen Z protest, and the response of the government is just blame game. It's just saying this one is the one who is leading the Gen Z. There were some people who had some goons that made, instead of focusing on how they can compensate this, the families that lost their loved ones, how they can be able to incorporate them even in government, and also how they can be able to account for these lives. But we have seen they are just doing what we call showboating, shadow boxing, this one and this one, blame game, which is not helping and it's adding pain to injury.
Before you continue,
Yes.
just what can the government do to make sure, or rather to probably give these families who lost their loved ones some kind of a closure?
Okay, they can do a state recognition to them, that's one. And then they can also, as my friend is saying, they can also address the issues and concerns they were raising. At least this one now will see, the families will see now, at least they lost their lives in the course of which brought transformation and change, because some of the things were addressed, and they will be at peace knowing that now they can move on with their lives because what has been agitated for is being done.
Now, one of
Yes.
the things that came out in this protest was the use of excessive force by the police officers. And you realized yesterday that the cabinet secretary currently in charge of Interior gave some kind of directive which did not sit well with some of the class online people shunning what he said. Do you think that he's sanctioning, or in one way or the other, giving the police a clear bill of health?
I think first, it's very unfortunate to note that the GenZ organized a very peaceful demonstration until, I must say, some of them, because those who looted, those who set ablaze the police station on fire were also part of demonstrators. I do condemn that act, because if the Constitution give us the ability and that democratic space to air out our problems, we are not supposed to go that direction. But I think the speech which was just made by the cabinet secretary for Interior is not that much important in this hour. I think what he must do at this hour is just to identify some of the police officers who used excessive force, at the same time conduct research on some of the protesters who set ablaze things such as a police station, because that is against the law, to say the truth. Some of the businesses were heavily looted, as we can see online and from every corner of the country. I think those are some of the priorities they must give. But in the real sense, yes, I've listened to whatever he talked about. But whatever I talked about, as I said, is even adding more anger to the people. Because at a situation such as this, we must have leaders in love with diplomacy. We sit down on the table of agreement to chart our way forward. But you cannot say that I'm going to arrest those who have done this and this. They are all over. We are working on them. What about from the government side? Those police officers who thrusted bullets in a callous manner to the people and led to loss of life of a good number of Kenyans. I think we should go that direction.
Now, to take this conversation a little bit higher, you realize that, as I told you earlier, that the government said that it will open up some kind of latitude or space to, dialogue with everyone. In your view, Mr. Nehemiah,
Yes.
what has the government done to create that space that it can talk to the people directly, especially Gen Z, and listen to their views so that it can take actions on that?
Okay, there's a time the Gen Z was summoned to the State House, the so-called representative of the Gen Z, and the president talked to them. But this one is not enough, because just talking will not help, because the Gen Z they want address of the real issues that are affecting them. And I think unless these issues are addressed, we will still keep on repeating the same thing. And I think, unfortunately, the same cycle will keep repeating itself.
Yes, that is something that we will ponder on. And you realize that, you see, most of the people that organize these demonstrations, you see, this demonstration, some are spontaneous, some are not. For example, the ones that took place yesterday, it was kind of organized. Are there some challenges that probably the organizers of these demonstrations go through, probably in terms of logistics and what have you?
Yes, there is a very great problem in terms of logistics. I'll have it in two ways: a political problem and economic problem. In terms of transport and logistics, they do have some of the challenges. Especially, remember, some of the protesters are economically vulnerable, and you need at least to support them to reach the destination for change. But at the same time, we have seen a situation whereby some of the organizers, some of the people organizing the demonstration are being paid by some of the politicians. So they now cross the path to allegiance, whereby, and this was much evident even last year. You remember when some of the key figures who were there even in various media houses talking about the real change that we need, at the end of the day, they ended up being some of the very close allies of some political figures who are very friendly to government officials, which at the end of the day puts our democracy at a very big risk.
But you realize, you said that, you guys said that you were leaderless, you know?
Yes, as much as revolution is organic, it doesn't have a physical leader, but we do have people in front at the end of the day. We do not recognize them as our general leaders, but we have some people, because even when we talk about inclusion, when it comes to social and digital spaces, when we go to the Twitter to have a conversation, you must have the host for this conversation. You must have somebody who is going to introduce people on the basis of seniority. As much as we do not say that they are our specific leaders, these are just a group of people who are courageous enough, willing, and in fact they have volunteered at least to lead the space for us.
Oh, wow, that's good. Now, we'll continue with that conversation shortly. It's 3 minutes to 7:30, and thank you so much for still staying with us as we dissect this issue of Gen Z protests. It is 1 year since it started, and it is going on. It's something yesterday we saw, not yesterday, but on the 25th, and a congregation that is akin to that, and we'll be dissecting these two at the other part of this broadcast. Stay with us.
You are normal huku nje, and that's the choice of the art today is graphite and charcoal. What can't talk but will reply when spoken to. It's really smart. So Naja, you've actually made a name for yourself kwa hii industry.
Yangu ya art ni kitu nilizaliwa nayo actually. Art is part of my DNA kabisa.
So that's primary, secondary, were you doing art?
Yeah.
As a subject?
Okay, art niliona venye watu wengi wanajionanga mimi ni artist, acha nifanye art.
Yeah.
Niliona sasa ya nini niende nifanye kitu najua. Okay, my social media handles Cyprian Sova 777 Instagram.
And for the topic of the day is self-awareness and sisterhood. Self-awareness and sisterhood.
People know they're self-aware, but if you don't know how to act on it, then you're not really as self-aware as you think.
I usually say garbage in, garbage out, and whatever, you cannot give what you don't have. So impact yourself first and work on yourself. If you feel like they're draining you, well and good.
By the way, kuna kijana, unajua Ian amekuwa akinichanganya nini, and I really want us to be together. Unaambia Ian, acha nikwambie, ufanye hivi na hivi na hivi. Alafu tunakuja friend dinner or something, na kuna una turn up na yes, are you mad?
You know, as adulting is adulting, right now is the real intentionality that comes in. But if you are self-aware as a person, you get to now be intentional with ask, come on, make quite distant, you can reach out.
So today's game is sing the artist song, right? Sing the artist song.
Nyashinski!
Aya basi, sing for us.
Twende nalo.
Uko sana, wote malaika
Aibo,
na mabawa
aibo,
ya.
aibo.
Wote wanakita wendo mama ya.
Everywhere GBS.
Now, thank you so much for staying with us. I'm still with my guests here, Mr. Moses Nyanduga, a political expert, and Mr. Nehemiah Kiarie, a governance expert rather. And we're still making sure that we make sense of this topic, Gen Z protest 1 year on. What are the lessons learned? What can we get? And I was speaking to you, Mr. Nehemiah, before just we went to a break. The government set out an ambitious kind of plan to implement some of the reforms probably that were brought out by Gen Z protest. In your view, do you think that those kind of programs have been implemented?
Some have been implemented, but some are still in question because what they just did like when the Gen Z demanded that the cabinet secretary to be removed. They did that when the Gen Z demanded that maybe this extravagance to tone down. They now hide what they are showcasing, but in real sense they have not done it too comprehensively. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Beg your pardon. The government, as I said earlier, set out rather a very ambitious plan. For example, cutting budgets into the First Lady's office, saying that it will do this and that. Do you think there are youth-centered programs that have been implemented by the government stemming from the Gen Z protests?
Yes, I believe. I must appreciate the fact that the just newly appointed PS, Firikini Jacobs, has been running a lot of training opportunities for young people. The government ministries, the one for environment and climate change, it's also training youth on various platforms to counteract the effects of climate change and to promote environmental conservation. On the other side, we have seen a situation whereby some government officials have voluntarily become patrons to various youth organizations, and they are steering up and in fact funding several activities. However, some of the very key elements in the society remains a mystery, in that what we need, what will bring and what will spur that change, the immediate cause of it is not being implemented. For instance, when you talk about climate change and environment, it's a good program, and I do recommend the government to continue training young people towards this. But we need things that are going to lead to a very direct and a positive impact to the lives of people. Things such as various training for short courses, which was just newly introduced, by the way, in partnership with IYF, the one in partnership with the State Department for Youth and the Creative Economy. We need such platforms whereby the government will do something for you, which at the end of the day will impact your life positively in a short range, not for a long-term goal.
And you realize that due to the uprising of the people, the government and the style of communication that the government has been communicating to the people, there is some kind of disconnect or distrust between the people and the government. Mr. Nehemiah, what can the government do to build this kind of trust again so that people can trust what the government agencies say?
Okay, one, the government should listen to the youth and the people. They should be able to address the challenges that are facing the youth. They should also be able to keep their promises. Once they promise this, they fulfill it. This one will enable to build trust for the government from the people. And this one will build a good relationship between the government and the people.
Do you think that the communication, or rather the trust between government and the people, is irreparable?
Yes, it can be restored back. And the government officials can restore it easily by just delivering. Because the only thing people need is service delivery. Once they deliver, the people do not have a problem. And two, we have seen situations whereby some of the government officials engaging in some of the very callous activities in the society, from how they address the people, how they view, contradictions and resistance from the people. As a good leader, if you want to restore back the trust, you must also be ready to face opposition. When people come and say, you failed us in this sector, yours as a leader is to come up with a remedy and to have a concrete plan so that these people can see the result, the positive result. Not you maybe threatening your people, arresting your people. When they go demonstrate, you organize even some of the goons to taint the name of the Protestants. I don't think that is in a good cause.
Now, the election of the country is coming in 2 years, that is 2027, and the youth are very many.
Yes.
And people have now started taking shape into which political space they could be. Do you believe, Mr. Nehemiah, that the Gen Z movement will shake up the kind of politics that will be at play in Kenya come 2027?
Yes, it will. And if the leaders are not up to par, some will be phased out. This is a revelation in such a way that the people will choose, will select, this is who we want as our leader because he has fulfilled such and such characters and he has such integrity, and they place them into the leadership skill. That's why right now everyone is talking about one term, but it's not talking about who is going to be the president of Kenya. They already know that one person is going to go home, maybe during the election, but they don't know, even they don't even mind to point out that this one is going to be the president, this one is going to be the MP or the governor, or so on and so forth. But they have in mind that the leaders that we want are of this integrity, they are of this character. So this revolution will go up to 2027, and many of the leaders, if they don't change, they will be phased out.
Is Gen Z a force to reckon with?
Yes and no at the same time. I'll say that this kind of force, number one, should not just be taken for granted, because it can change the entire political landscape of the country. And in fact, it has changed a good percentage of the landscape. I'll say that let the political leaders snob Gen Z's demand at their own risk. And I'll say this with, today it's like a song in town, the one term. And I'll explain that, when anybody talk about one term, people are only thinking of one person, President William Ruto, which is not the case. And in fact, you've had several government officials talking about one term, they want to do what with it and whatever, singing the song. It's not all about the singer of the song. It's all about the intended purpose of the song. And in this case, we are saying, when we talk about one term, we are not only talking about presidency. We are saying that MCA in your area, who is not doing anything constructive, must also be a one term. That MP, whether governor or senator, they must also be one term. So let the government officials recognize that when we talk about one term, it's not only one position. Yes. And this force should only, like I said, be snubbed at their own risk. In that, if the youth constitute a good percentage of Kenyan population demographically, and morphographically, at the end of the day, we must take into account this, because politics is about numbers. What will you do as a leader when the greatest share of the population runs away from you? You must go and consolidate that, percentage of voters. So let them do everything possible to cause that.
Now, Mr. Nehemiah,
Yes.
there's a lot of political discourse around this issue about Gen Z. What shift has the Gen Z movement created in the political discourse that we are having in the country today?
Now, the Gen Z, one should realize that these are the children of the Matiang'i era, whereby there was the free education, there was the streamlined education, whereby there was integrity in the exams. The education was very serious at that time. These are youth that have gone through various set books on leadership and integrity, and even the society, how the leadership and development affects it at large. So the Gen Z movement has brought a shift whereby, in this case, in our political landscape, we were mtu wetu wako pale. We have our person from our own child, from our own community. But in real sense, the Gen Z have brought an idea that this one does not benefit someone individually or even as the mwananchi level. So we need leaders that are trustworthy, that can deliver, as has been stated, and leaders that we can trust on them with our public resources.
Now, Mr. Moses, how has the movement shifted the political discourse in this country, especially in the media and just wherever in the environment that you walk around in?
Yes, I'll say that this kind of revolution, let me just call it a revolution, because that's the right term for me to use.
Yes.
This revolution has caused a very positive and negative change in the society. The first positive change it has caused is that the leaders have come to realize that the next election will be determined by who can deliver, not by who can distribute a good amount of money. Two, the fact that now we are moving from being so tribal when it comes to election now to manifesto-based kind of election, it's a life-threatening to majority of our leaders. I'll say it's a life-threatening to majority of the leaders because when you have a look...
Life-threatening in terms of...
politically life-threatening.
Yes.
In that, they are used to a system whereby the mtu wetu, he was talking about.
Exactly.
The mtu wetu syndrome, whereby if I am a Luo and I'm vying, even some of the sub-counties around Nairobi, dominated by my tribe, I stand a good chance. If I'm a Kikuyu and applying the same, I stand a good chance. But now you see, when we are evolving from that era to an era whereby the kind of evolution we have is that we are going to consider manifesto, to consider the good deeds and qualities of leadership. It's politically life-threatening now, because as a leader, if I don't promise these people, then at the end of the day, I won't be elected. And if I was planning to go for incumbency now, at the end of the day, I won't stand a chance. So it has just revolutionized the electoral system in the country, from being that kind of system to now a modern and value-based political system.
Now you realize that the political actors know this, that the political narrative in the country has quite changed significantly, but there is a risk of co-opting the Gen Z agenda into their political spanner wheel. Right, Mr. Nehemiah?
Yes. There's this situation that people are trying now to own the Gen Z. They are trying to be like the leaders of the Gen Z. They are trying to be like someone saying, the kingsman or kingship of the movement of the Gen Z. And the hooliganism that has been put in this Gen Z protests have also tainted the name as the violent kind of push for change, and in this case it might tarnish and change the course of the Gen Z process.
Now, Mr. Moses, you realize even yesterday we had some political players in the morning laying wreath to probably where some lives were lost last year, yes. And Mr. CJ Emeritus, Justice Maraga, you know, coming out, walking side by side with Gen Zs. Do you think that is there a plot to turn the movement into some kind of personal political gain?
Yes, I believe. You know, we say that some things are right, some things are wrong. Absolutely so. I believe majority of the political leaders who are now coming to own the Gen Z or trying to own the Gen Z, they do consist part of the problem we have in this country. Because the first question is, in the case of now our judicial system, although Justice Maraga played his part, but we cannot see someone today is the one, in fact, even insulting the police, that go and fire ladies past protesters. Then tomorrow, because of political reasons, is joining the same people. Today we see somebody on the street talking about how the government has failed the local mwananchi. Tomorrow is on the government side. And remember, when these factors hasn't changed any time, we are seeing these people, the factors haven't changed, but the same political figures are shifting camp. I think I'll best describe this when, you know, predicating with whatever Professor Pierre Lumumba once said, that the monkeys are the same, the forests are different. We have them today on our side, but because of political reasons, tomorrow they'll join us, tainting the name of the government. Again, once they're dumped again, they'll come back. So I think some of them are just chasing clout, while some of them are real fighters. People like Martha Karua, we have seen her most of the times fighting on the side of the people. So for some of them, we do congratulate and say, let them continue with that. And we as the voters, we should reconsider them for political posts. While some of them do constitute part of the problem we have in the society.
Okay. Now, you realize that this movement was born out of social media, and social media has played a critical role in as far as mobilizing people. How can we harness, Mr. Nehemiah,
Yes.
the social media to kind of have some kind of positive impact on our lives as people of Kenya?
Okay, the social media has played a great role in the, you know, political developments, but it has been used most cases as an inciting tool, and the one that spreads the idea of maybe protest, of maybe, you know, demonizing the government, creating a lot of anger towards the government and hatred, which is not positive in this case, but it should be used positively, in the sense that it brings out the message that for people to hear. Like today, our president has just talked about the SMEs and he has done a very good message, but it will not be marketed as such, and the intention is good and the message is clear, but you find that in cases whereby there is a negativity, this is the one that is publicized and spreads like wildfire.
But you see, it's only bad news that sells.
Yes.
But Mr. Moses,
Yes.
social media has been used numerously, and you realize that the government sometimes acts that it wants to probably stifle social media and making sure that that it doesn't thrive. Of course, President William Ruto has always come out saying that he won't do that. But do you think that it will reach a time that the government, for whatever reason, will shut down the social media?
I know very well it can reach that point. It's very unfortunate that it can reach that point, as we have seen several times without numbers, because even the media itself has at a time been weaponized. We saw during the last year Gen Z protest when one of the journalists was even shot in Nakuru. You remember?
Yes.
By a police officer.
Yes.
A rubber bullet.
Yes. We saw this year again when the government ordered for, I can say, a temporary ban for the live airing of the Gen Z protest. These are some of the protests or some of the small steps we are seeing which will automatically bound to a very big one. As in the case of social media, I'll also encourage my fellow youths. The government, I know very well, for one or two reasons, will in future, not necessarily even the Ruto's government, because some of the problems we have in Kenya is intergenerational. They do change from one generation to another. And once they move forward still, we shall also protest them because it's the role of the people to do that. But I'll say that it has also reached a point when we must also reconsider how we are using the social media. In some of the countries like China, some of the progressive societies and communities, social media is a tool for even journalism and mass media training. Social media is a tool for greater advertisement. Social media is a tool for campaign against climate change and environmental restoration. So we as young people, whether it comes to our sports, even the sport industry in Africa, it's down. It's the role of social media to make it as popular as we just support the English football teams. So I believe we must reconsider the use of social media as the people. However, if the government has any plan to maybe reconsider again how the social media is being used in the society, they are welcome to do that, but with thorough public participation. Because without that, we as young people, again, we will question that. If the answers they'll give us do not reflect to our demands or our expectation, we'll again take them to the street.
Now, you realize, Mr. Nehemiah, I want you to come in here. Yes. There's a lot of things that happened, especially in that Gen Z protest. A lot of demands, of course, some unfortunately deaths. Are there lessons to be learned, especially by the government, onto how to deal with intergenerational, let's say, grievances?
Yes, I think the protest now should be taken positively by the government. In this case, even the government should facilitate the protest in the sense that the police are on the side of the protesters. And it should be done in like what is done in South Africa. It should be done in a moderate way.
Police inside of the protesters?
Yes. I mean that they go with them. But it's not a fight now between the protesters this side and then the police this side.
Protection?
It becomes a battle. It becomes like it's now a war. It's even the protesters when they, but like the other one, it was peaceful. But when they realize that now they can, it seems they can never be a peaceful demonstration. So now they have started now going when they are armed and ready for anything or anything, any moment can happen. Like you see people are going for a protest, they have already applied goggles because of the tear gas, they already have water, you know, and some other masks and other things. But if it can be done in a peaceful way, whereby they can go even to Uhuru Gardens, they pray, after that they march, led by a police band, slowly by slowly, they go in certain terrain and go back to their destination, and then speeches can be offered. Then in this case, the protest will be addressed.
Now, Mr. Moses,
yes.
What are some of the lessons that the government has learned from this protest, and how has that influenced rather their policy decision?
I'll say number one, the government has learned that public participation is a very important aspect in leadership. In the sense that, you know, there was a time, although I cannot say that there was a time they thought that people are fools, but there was a time when they thought that when they just lead you in the wrong direction, you'll just be okay. But they've come to realize, and have come to terms, that there comes a time when people do not spare them. Two, the government has come to learn that some of the policies they make, because the legislature, which constitute the elected members of parliament and senate, there's also a branch of the government, as an arm, they've again come to realize that the people are so knowledgeable enough to understand their daily duties when it comes to policy and framework guidance. On the side of judiciary, they've also learned that some of the judgments they do make on a daily basis, some of them are not friendly to the people. And it's time for every arm of the government to realize its role, whether executive, legislature, or judiciary. In final to that, I'll say the government has just learned that the people are knowledgeable enough, the people can air out their voices without fear of anything. And the most greatest lesson to the political class is that the people do not need them to organize this protest. You know, this is the first time in history we are seeing a situation whereby we are going to the street without an influence of a politician. It's just the people rallying their own support and demanding a fair and justifiable cause for their daily life. So I think that's a very, very big lesson to the government.
Now, on that lessons, you realize that the government has a lot to learn, has a lot to, you know, get when dealing with the Gen Z protesters and moving forward. When you look back at the protest and how it began, you know, it was a movement in social media and then came out. Do you think that we can have again such a momentum again, or something, some kind of a rallying call that rallies people behind it, Mr. Nehemiah?
Yes, we can, because the way the Gen Z protest started, it started as a way of informing the government on the changes that they needed and the change that they wanted from their leaders in how they were conducting and how they were governing the country. But it went now into a situation whereby sometimes even it can overwhelm even the police and the rest of the security facilities. But now there's another way that the positive way can come up, in which case that people can be sensitized in a way that can bring change and positiveness in the society.
Now, Mr. Moses, I want to get your insight on that. Do you think that there is some kind of a rallying call that can once again bring out people like it did in in last year, like the Finance Bill 2024?
Yes. I do believe this is a revolution which has just started, but for the good cause of the country. Let our political class do not fear this revolution, because when we are taking it to the street, we are also demanding for the right of even the ruling class, of everyone. And I believe Kenyans are tired. Kenyans are very tired, not only with life, but with the other physical aspects of life. I'll say that there is a possibility that we shall have the same rallying call, just like the same we have last year and even this year, because a good number of people came out to protest against this. And the main cause or the main determinant of this will be the following. If the government will streamline the education system to suit the goals and vision of the people, it will be better. If the government can make health ministry work for the betterment of the people, so that we don't hear cases of organ transplant and transfer and whatever in a marauding manner, we don't hear cases of SHA, the shift not working, it will be a mess. But once they can clear that mess, it will be on a good course. If the government can do something to ensure Kenya becomes a food secure country, you know, it's not the role of the government to give you food, but some of the small steps the government can do to impact the life of every individual in a country. When you create education, or you make education to be free, health system to be free, Kenya to be a food secure country, I won't see a possibility of anyone going to the street. Because these are some of the problems we are fighting against. And lastly, corruption. Once the government, led by President William Ruto, can clear that, because he is the CEO of this government, and his orders are, to date, working, is the one to correct this mess. Once they can clear that mess, then I won't see young people going to the streets.
Now, before I go to Nehemiah, now we have had a very nice conversation about the Gen Z protest. So what would you advise the government moving forward as you give us your final statement?
Thank you. My advice to government is this. Although government is an association of people, but now I'll give to the government officials. They must, number one, remember that power is temporary and fleeting. And they must also remember that the government eats its own children. Today you are in government, tomorrow you will be a local raia. The Dale Carnegie Leadership School teaches us that you must begin imagining yourself on your first day of retirement, how people will judge you, how people will say, there came Mr. So-and-so who led us. He brought change in the following sectors. You as a leader, you must do something to leave imprint as time slips back into history.
Indeed, indeed. You need to leave your imprint. What about you, Mr. Nehemiah? Your final thoughts and probably an advice to government operatives?
Yes, I would advise the president that the country is heading to the wrong direction. And there is a lot of frustration and anger that is coming from the people. And I think it's at high time the government should sit down with the opposition. Not a handshake really, but they try and sit down and see the way forward on how they can resolve these challenges and problems that are facing us. But if they continue to chest thump and to continue to threatening the people and trying to measure the strength of the people, they will go into the worst direction this country has ever been.
Wow, thank you so much. My guests, Mr. Moses and Nehemiah, thank you so much for your time. We have been having a conversation about the Gen Z protest 1 year on, what are the changes that have been undertaken, and what can we do moving forward. This conversation does not end here. It continues in our social media platform at GBS TV, YouTube, Facebook, and X at also Emmanuel Oma. Thank you so much for watching. Good evening.
Everywhere GBS.